Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello everyone, welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. Joining me tonight as co-host is going to be John Strobman and Gerald Riggins, and they've graciously volunteered to come help me in my hour of need, and I really do appreciate the heck out of them. I know my voice don't sound the best in the world. I'm working on getting it better, so just hang with me. And tonight we're going to be talking to Larry Flaxman and to Marie D. Jones, and we're talking about their most recent book titled This Book is from the Future. And I've had the time to read this, folks, and I got to tell you, I never realized until reading this book how many different angles time travel could be discussed from. I knew there was more than one facet involved, but I never really sat down and take the time of day to really think about how many different ones there were. And this book really gives you a lot of food for thought. It's a very entertaining book, and it's a plus for anybody if you ask me, in my personal opinion. Of course, I was just telling this Arthur earlier that her and Larry and Nick write some of the most interesting books that I've been reading here lately, and I really got to appreciate the work that they do. So, at any rate, let's go ahead and get this show on the road. Larry, Marie, thank you very much for coming and telling us about the book and being a part of my show again.
Well, it's good to do that.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having us.
Oh, anytime. Matter of fact, I'm hoping to have you for your next book that's coming out we were talking about. And John, Gerald, I want to thank y'all for being here to help me through this. Why don't we get the ball rolling by going ahead and letting Marie and maybe Larry tell us real quick, what got them the interest in this particular book about time travel?
Well, it's something Larry and I were obviously both interested in for years. But if I remember correctly, and Larry can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we were thinking again about writing a different book as our next book for the publisher, and it was their idea that we think about doing something with time travel, and we said, well, yeah, let us think about it because it seems like there's so many books out there. And what happened was when we really looked into it, there weren't that many. There were a lot of books that talk about time travel in some respect, but there were very, a lot of deep physics. We wanted to do something for the mass audience that everybody could understand, where the science was easy to wrap your mind around, and just something that also talked a lot about the different anomalies of time itself, because time is just as fascinating as time travel. So that's how it came about.
Well, I don't think you could have picked a better partner to discuss this with other than Larry. You two, y'all been a team for many years now, haven't you? And y'all just compliment each other.
We think
absolutely.
So.
Yeah,
it's
I think
going
so
on
too.
6 years, Larry. Can you believe it? 6 years going on.
Gosh, yeah. Time just absolutely flies.
It does. And sometimes it seems like we've known each other forever because when you're writing, when you're working together, we talk a lot. You get really involved in each other's lives, and we talk all the time. And then other times I think, oh, my God, when did we bang out so many books? It feels like just yesterday when, we first started talking. But it's been really great, and everybody seems to think that, we have a really great dynamic. So we keep going.
Well, I would tend to agree with everybody. Well, one of the things I wanted to ask y'all about was the Ouroboros. Now, this is something I've read about online before, and I know that it deals with the circle of time in some fashion. Can you give us a little bit better of a breakdown than I'm giving about the Ouroboros?
Well, it's a symbol for infinity and the way that time is cyclical and, sort of what comes around goes around, and every ending is a new beginning. And I think it's just the idea of a snake swallowing its own tail, and just that never-ending cycle of time that doesn't break. And I think it makes us sometimes feel like we're just sort of a little mark on that infinite cycle of time the time that we're here on Earth. But then again, as we're exploring in our next book, death may just be another part of the cycle of time, because again, if it's eternal, we should be too.
And, you're talking about infinity. I've heard that the figure 8 is also a symbol for infinity. So I wonder why there's a need for two symbols for infinity.
I think just different cultures, have their different favorite symbol. Ouroboros, I think, is more of a natural cycle, the idea of the natural cycles of time, no beginning, no end. And I think infinity, that was more of a mathematical symbol.
Now, that would make a lot of sense. Okay, I lost my place there for a second. I'm back. Actually, I discovered 2 questions in one shot. Okay, Larry, since she's took a couple, why don't you take a couple?
Sure.
What does entropy have to do with time travel?
Well, entropy is kind of, it follows along the same route that Marie was talking about. There's different angles, I guess you could look at how that would apply to time travel. The idea of entropy, it's a scientific idea that has roots in thermodynamics, and it's basically, when most people refer to entropy, they think of the second law of thermodynamics, which basically said, well, the first law, just for those of your listeners that don't know, basically says that matter and energy can't be created nor destroyed. The second law of thermodynamics, which is really what entropy speaks to, basically says that, okay, since energy and matter can't be created or destroyed, it has the ability to transfer into other forms. The ancient alchemists used to call it transmutation. It really depends on what your definition of change is, but when you melt an ice cube and turn it into water, that would be a form of mutation or form of transfer. So its application in time travel, there's lots of different possibilities with that. When you think of that
like
kind of
time,
kind of relate that to time. Time is really a linear function that we've created. And if you kind of apply the principles of thermodynamics, if you will, to time, all the time that's ever created, ever has been created, ever will be created, and ever is. There is no past, there is no present, there is no future. It's basically just one thing. And it's able to, kind of shift and morph between what we consider to be the past and what we consider to be the present and the future.
Okay. Now, pardon me. It would happen just as I was fixing to speak.
It always happens that way.
Yeah.
Now, the next one I was going to ask was, Larry, can you tell us about some time travel devices?
Well, there's a lot of time travel devices. I would say both theoretical, fictional, as well as possibly really existing today. Lots of theories about time travel. Obviously, time travel is a very, I guess you would say, viral concept. If you look in movies and books, science fiction books and stuff for probably the last 150 years or so, time travel's been a very integral part of that. And as a result, there's obviously lots of different fictional permutations of time travel. There's H.G. Wells' Time Machine. There's the transporter on Star Trek, in essence. Different types of mechanistic type devices for time travel. There is a belief that we are able to time travel today using our own innate abilities, basically internal to us, which would be either while you're sleeping, while you're having some type of an out-of-body or some type of an astral travel type experience, or when you go into some type of deep meditative state where you lose that boundary of time. So time travel devices, you've got physical, you've got non-physical. There's lots of different ways and different ideas behind it. To date, there is no real 100% proof of time travel. There's a lot of good scientific evidence that points to the idea that it's certainly scientifically reasonable and feasible. But at this point, we don't really have a working time travel device. There's no DeLorean that you can just jump in, turn the key, hit 88 miles per hour, energize it to 1.21 gigawatts, and travel back in time. We don't have that yet.
You remember all that stuff, huh?
I do, yeah. We don't have that quite yet. But we're working on it. There's actually a professor by the name of Ronald Mallett.
I'm familiar with his work. I looked it up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He's a physics professor at UConn, and Professor Mallett has actually said, I can build a time travel machine. He actually has an idea.
He'll do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a ridiculously low amount of money that he was requesting to build a prototype of this device. I mean, it was like $250,000. You would think a government contract, that's probably pocket change for the ability to time travel. But it uses a series of rotating lasers and magnetic fields, and it's kind of a cool thought experiment or project. But to go back to your question, to date, there really is no real time travel machine. There's nothing that we can just get in, flip the switch, and travel back or forth in time.
I think some of the, like on the movie Contact, where she's sitting in a pod that drops into a sort of gyroscope that's manipulating the electromagnetic field. What's interesting is that device has been used in a lot of stories in different ways. So there's like obviously something behind that concept. Right? That we even found some old, and I'm talking from the 1800s, short stories about time travel where they used hypnosis, dreams, knocking somebody on the head, knocking them unconscious, and they wake up, 500 years in the future. I think fiction writers just, some of them used whatever came to mind, and I think others were trying to really use what was available, the science that was available for their time. So it's really interesting to see how some of those devices have sort of evolved over the years.
Even beyond the devices, though, it's interesting, or it's because there are people that have had experiences, and they've spoken about these experiences where they're walking down the street and all of a sudden everything just shifts, and they're in a different time. They've traveled back in time, or they've traveled forward in time. So, I mean, that cultural, you may not even need a device. I mean, it's like the world just kind of changes around us. So maybe
something environmental, maybe.
The idea of walking into a portal or something in our immediate environment that may be acting as a time travel device as well.
Yeah.
Maybe it's our awareness is moved from one point in time to another along parallel universe scales, and we see things different suddenly because our awareness went from one place and point in time to another.
Right. Well, they're called time slips, and we actually wrote about a lot of them that occur where, like Larry said, you might just be walking down the street or, driving to the corner 7-Eleven, and all of a sudden you're 500 miles up the road, 10 hours later, and you were just going out for a 10-minute walk. It's as if, and a lot of times these people report like a sort of greenish or electrically charged fog, which is associated with like the Bermuda Triangle and a lot of UFO activity.
Or the Philadelphia experiment.
Exactly.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So it's like, okay, is there something environmental? Are there different hot spots all over the globe where, you just happen to walk through at the right time and you get zapped into the past or the future? And that does seem to be happening. So the device may be perfectly natural and not even have to be some type of mechanical object.
That's interesting.
I really, really wanted that DeLorean.
You did? Why didn't you? Did somebody put it up on eBay or something?
No.
No?
I really
Gotta
wanted
be in a
one.
museum or something, right?
I think there's multiple movie replicas. I saw one at a casino once.
Did you?
Yeah, I don't think it was the original one though.
Real quick, why don't we bring Gerald and John in and see if they got any comments what we got so far, or if they got anything else they want to add or ask. And John, why don't we start with you?
Well, I'm kind of curious, Royce, as to whether in their studies, have they come across any documentation of anybody that says or claims to have traveled in time. I mean, I don't know of any people that are listed as saying that they ever came from or experienced any time travelers.
There is actually. There's several. Probably one of the most famous ones, and it was one that went just incredibly viral back in 2000, 2001 on the internet. Was a to date, this guy has not been identified, but he went by the name John Titor. And according to myth of the time, Mr. Titor was a time traveler from the year, I think, 2036, if I remember right.
2036. Yeah.
Well, Mr. Titor, the story was he came back from 2036 and he stopped in 2000 to visit family on his way back to the 1970s. He was a U.S. Soldier, a United States government employee. He was a soldier that was sent back from the future to the past to retrieve a piece of ancient archaic computer technology. It was an old punch card IBM mini computer from the 1970s. According to Titor, this archaic ancient piece of crap computer was required to save the world basically in 2036. So he stopped off in 2000 to visit friends on his way back to the 70s. And what he did when he came back was he posted all kinds of information on the internet, specifically news groups at the time. Back in the early days of the internet, 2000, 2001, as compared to today, the internet really didn't have as much interactivity. There was a lot more communication on news groups and Usenet and places like that. And and what Titor did was he posted a series of predictions. Well, first he went on there and he told everyone that he was a time traveler. He provided documentation on his time travel machine. Actually the operating manual. It was supposedly created by General Electric. He showed pictures of his time travel machine, which happened to be a Chevy Corvette with the time travel device mounted in the back seat. Wasn't quite the DeLorean, but at least he had the Corvette. And he proceeded to make a series of, to date, which have all, none of them have come true, but he provided a series of reports and different predictions of what would happen in the future. And like I said, none of it has come to date. So the guy was probably just a big phony, just a fraud, but very, very famous. I mean, that was one of the first, I guess, viral time travelers.
Time travel urban legend.
Yeah. That's one. There's another guy out. He's actually a friend of mine on Facebook, although we've never spoken. He requested me, so I'm not sure if he's trying to keep an eye on me or not. But it's a gentleman by the name of Andrew Basiago. And
I know him.
According to Andrew, he's a time traveler. He took part in a government project as a child. He was, I can't remember how old he was, 9, 10, 11. And he took part in this experiment where they sent him back in time. And he claims that he can be seen in a photograph that was taken of Lincoln at the Gettysburg Address. There's a Josephine Cogg was the photographer, and she took a photo that shows a boy with these large man shoes, these large shoes. Man-sized shoes, and the guy looked like he was out of place. Well, Basiago claims that this little boy that Josephine Cogg photographed in the photo of Lincoln was him. Now, there's a lot of conspiracy behind that as well. There's a lot of possibilities. I mean, hell, I could claim it was me. The photo is so blurry, you can't make out any details. It just looks like a boy in the middle of a field in front of Lincoln, and he's saying that was him, that was photographic proof that he was there. I mean, maybe that's what I should do, Marie. I'm going to start saying that, I don't know, I was on the moon or something when Armstrong landed. You know?
You should. Yeah. You saw him, you talked to him, you shook his hand. We talked about at one time how easy it is to go viral with these urban legends or conspiracies or anything. I mean, that's not to say that there's nothing going on under the radar. I'm sure the U.S. government, among others, probably have some time travel research going on and have been for a while, but there's so many claims out there by different people that they were involved in different things. There's these urban legends having to do with people that are seen in photographs that look like they were too futuristic to be back in the 1940s or what have you. And of course, none of it is provable.
Yeah.
The Charlie Chaplin viral image and video.
Charlie Chaplin,
The one with the cell phone.
Right,
yeah,
right.
It
looks like an old woman, although Miss Larry always says, that's not.
It looks like a dude.
a guy. It looks like a guy.
No, that's a dude. I mean, it's got
It looks like a guy too, yeah.
It looks like a dude. I mean, it's got an Adam's apple. What more can you say?
Yeah.
But
So
clearly it looks
stuff.
like he's using a cell phone too, yeah.
And there's Roswell. Even the Roswell UFO crash has alleged time travel connections where a very famous, very well known, respected general saw the wreckage, saw the entities, and said that they were literally us from the future. They were time travelers. So, you know, how do you 100% disprove this stuff? You can't 100% prove it. If Basiago really did go to Mars and see Barack Obama when he was a teenager, you know, all these legends and stories that come out of this one particular myth, I like to call it, we need proof. And my question has always been, if the government has the ability to send people, if they did in the 70s, have the ability to send people back in time, why are the most brilliant theoretical physicists of our time still trying to figure out how to do it? They should have figured it out, you know?
Yeah, not only that, why is our society so effed up? You know, you would think if that's type of technology.
Yeah, right. They're,
unless
they're going to use it for negative, for weapons and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
it just doesn't make sense. I mean, we're talking about in the 1970s, the Montauk Project, and I mean all the way back into the 40s if you want to talk about the Philadelphia experiment. And yes, some of that technology has definitely come to pass. Cloaking, being able to render a two-dimensional, three-dimensional object invisible has come to pass using microwaves. But time travel is so huge. I mean, talk about trying to keep a secret. I don't know. I just don't see any evidence or any proof that anybody's achieved what some of these people say they have.
Okay. Real quick, like, before we have Gerald come in and ask anything or add anything, almost forgot, got so wrapped up in the conversation to mention you can learn more about Marie D. Jones at her website, www.mariedjones.com, and Larry's website is www.rpast.org, and their links are right below the chat room in the show description. And at the bottom of the show description, there is a book cover to the Amazon where you can get their book at if you're interested, and it will be in the archives probably tomorrow, maybe the next day, as soon as I can get it prepared, moved over for any of those interested. If you want to join us live, it's www.paranormalpalace.com. We also have blogs, forums, groups. It's really a social networking / radio site to try to give people a chance to interact who are interested. Feel free to come over and join the fun. So, moving along with that, oh, by the way, if y'all want to ask questions, the call-in number is 832-632-7904. On our last show, I talked about saving 30 minutes at the end of the show for questions. I'll be doggone if I didn't mess up and forget and get out of the show without doing it. So for tonight's show, if you have a question, go ahead and call when you have it. And on a future show, I'll get the other system worked out where I don't forget. I'll put a document up or something to remind me. Gerald, did you want to ask anything or comment on anything we've covered so far? Do you want to bring up something new or what?
Yeah, I have a question for both of you guys. Have you guys ever come across any evidence or rumors or just myths, urban myths, basically, that we're living in an alternate, kind of a parallel universe to something that originally happened?
Oh man, tons of them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very popular theory, not just with our pop culture movies, TV shows. It's funny because Larry and I worked with a producer director named Bruce Lucas who just emailed me earlier about a new movie coming out about a time traveler who goes into a parallel universe to try to stop Hitler. I mean, that idea is so prevalent in our entertainment and our pop culture, and I think scientifically, oh my gosh, like every day, Larry and I are emailing back and forth stories about how there's more circumstantial evidence, let's say, of parallel universes or other realities. I sent him something, I think, this morning that we'll be including in our next book, because that is what we're going to take a look at. What is reality? Are there all these other levels, these other worlds, these other realities? Are we getting some kind of interaction between them all? Can we move from one to the other? Can we move from one timeline to the other timeline? So absolutely, I think that's probably the big theory that everybody's trying to dig their fingers into, and definitely us as well. What do you think, Larry?
No, absolutely. I think the possibility of it would certainly explain probably just about every damn thing that we consider to be paranormal. I mean, just the idea of the multiverse, parallel universes. I mean, it's an enticing theory because it really, I think, adequately would answer a lot of the mysterious and anomalous stuff that we're experiencing today that we don't have any type of scientific understanding of, especially things that seem to defy our own physical laws of nature. So absolutely, I think that's a huge part of the equation, and that's probably I know that's where Marie and my work is certainly headed in that direction.
Yeah, but in terms of like people that claim to be from other universes, I think time travelers. I think if you want to look at the bigger picture, Larry and I've talked about this at length. Ghosts, aliens, cryptids. Why are we always assuming that these types of entities come from this universe? Because so many of the reports of ghosts, aliens, cryptids, you name it, talk about how they seem to be almost projections that are coming from somewhere else, almost like a movie projector projecting an image on the wall. And this is actually a theory, the holographic universe theory, whereby our reality is a projection from a higher dimension onto our three-dimensional world. And a lot of the sightings of, say, UFOs, you'll hear people say things like, I heard a pop and an electrical fizzle, and it just appeared in the sky and then just literally disappeared. It didn't shoot off into the distance. It just appeared and disappeared right before my eyes. Almost like somebody... Yeah. And ghosts, I mean, we hear that so much about ghosts as well, that some of the appearances and the way that they vanish, it almost looks like somebody turned off a movie camera that was projecting an image on a wall.
Okay. Was there anything else you wanted to add, Gerald?
Well, I do, and this one's to Larry. Larry, I noticed that you were a huge fan. I love the fact you're a huge fan of Back to the Future, and I too would love to find the DeLorean stash somewhere.
They have them on eBay. There's actually, believe it or not, there is a huge underground market for people that buy up DeLoreans and convert them into DeLoreans from Back to the Future. I mean, they sell like all the crap, all the electronics to replicate just like from the movie. They've got the what was the big thing, the flashing thingy in there, the
flux capacitor.
Yeah, the flux capacitor. They sell those things. I mean, you could certainly make your own.
Oh man. Well, I notice all the people that claim they're from the future, that we've seen on the boards and stuff, especially YouTube. None of them have ever come back and said, we have a cure for cerebral palsy or this disability or this disorder.
Right.
And, I'm thinking, and I'm a huge Star Trek fan. John knows that. And as Mr. Royce gets to know me, he'll know that I'm a huge Trekkie. In Star Trek, the Enterprise series, it was very short-lived. One of the doctor, I believe it was Dr. Phlox, had said by the 22nd century they had found a cure for cerebral palsy. And that's the only reference I hear to anyone, from a series, that is futuristic or whatever. But, it would be nice if someone were to say, hey, I'm from the future, and just let everyone know that these disabilities are very rare in the future time, go ahead.
That's absolutely awesome. And I wish that could be the case, but for all the cool stuff that we're talking about the possibilities of time travel, there's just as many things that say it's not possible. And there are certain, there are I don't know if you want to call them laws, but there are certain hypotheses that basically say that even if time travel is possible, there's a very good likelihood that if you were able to somehow travel back and forth in time, that you couldn't affect the future or the past, that it would basically be kind of a read-only state. You'd be able to view it. You wouldn't be able to actually change it. You wouldn't be able to interact with it. You wouldn't be able to have any type of causal connection really with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so even if you had the technology and the ability to travel back in time, there may be some sort of physical law of nature that's actually preventing us from having interaction with that. In other words, it's kind of like, do you remember? Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Do you remember back in the day, the old floppy disk that had the little write protect tabs on them?
Oh, yeah.
Remember those? Yeah, you don't see those anymore. But, a lot of people think that time is very much of a similar iconology as that once an event has occurred, once the present becomes, quote, the past, that right tab gets pushed and you can't change it. But there's also people that say, well, you get the multiverse connected in with that, and you get the idea of parallel dimensions and universes, and that, every act basically branches off and splits into a whole new reality, a whole new chism, if you will, of possibilities. So, maybe, maybe not. I mean, that's kind of one of those things that you want to kind of really think about whether it would be smart to have the ability, first of all. I mean, I'm not so sure. Would you really want the government having the ability to change the past?
Or the future?
I'm not so
the
sure.
Present? Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, not only that, but your own friends and family. I mean, everyone, if you were to go back in the past and change something, you're not only changing your timeline, you're changing everybody's that you've ever come in contact with and all that 6 degrees of separation stuff. And ultimately, you could be wreaking havoc on a lot of people's presents and futures just because you thought you wanted to go back and change one little thing. So there's a real ethical issue to
Marie, and even you're absolutely right. And even, take that the next step. I mean, the butterfly effect, the whole thing.
Right.
You go back, you change something, causally there's a possibility that how you've done something, that 6 degrees of separation then was actually separated, and hell, you never existed. So you never existed, therefore how were you able to go back and change anything, or how were you ever to go forward and change anything? It's kind of that cyclical problem, and there's not really an answer to that. I mean, if you change one thing, unless you throw in the multiverse, which even then, there may be some possibilities that there would be damage. I mean, if you have some sort of the human internet, as we keep calling it, or the grid, if you have some sort of a connection between realities to yourself or to other humans, if that doesn't sever among the dimensions, I mean, there's an ethical concern with it, but there's also a tremendous strategic and also a tremendous what's the word? It's late. I'm having a brain fart.
That's one of my favorite sayings.
But no, you're right. I mean, you could think you're doing something good, like going back in time and killing a dictator before he kills 6 million people, and yet when you get into the present and the future, find out that act caused 25 million to die.
Or it caused you never to be born.
Or you go back and you change one little thing in your past. You go on a date with somebody that you had rejected you, and you end up getting into your present and future, and your whole life is a mess. And you realize, oh, wow, okay, so that's why things turned out the way they did. And people don't realize that. They don't realize, again, too, that at the quantum level, we're all linked. So therefore, what I go back and change is going to affect all of you and everybody else that I know or have spoken to or come in contact to or emailed or waved, on the street. I mean, we're all interconnected. So you change something, you're changing things for everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think that you have to be in the multiverse sort of theory for that to even be possible to start with. But then in that theory, how do you know you're the real you?
Exactly,
right,
exactly.
Sure.
That's been like the Band-Aid theory. Well, if you can't do it in Universe A, it's certainly possible for you to exist in your Universe B, but we're talking about us being aware of only one reality that we are in at the time. So who cares what happens in Universe B? I'm only aware of this reality. So if I'm altering this reality, that's what I'm going to be concerned with. But you're absolutely right. And we don't know if there's interaction between parallel universes. You could cause a nuclear war in this universe, and how do we know some of that doesn't leak over into the one that's closest to us? I mean, we just don't know because it's so theoretical.
Right.
Well, one of the theories in the paranormal world, Gerald and I are in a paranormal group. We do investigation stuff. And one of the theories is that, the black shadow people and the ghosts, they transverse across parallel universes and bumping in and out. And if that's the case, well then, there have to be other worlds or universes we can bump into too.
Right. Yeah, and that's definitely a theory that Larry and I talk a lot about, is the idea that we're not, why are we just limiting ourselves to believe that any kind of anomalous phenomenon comes from this level of reality? We have no idea where it comes from, and sometimes it really, truly behaves like it's coming from some other reality.
Well, we had even set up an enormous sound system to try to set up a resonant frequency where maybe we could make a tear and see if anything could come through while we tried videotaping it. We failed miserably, but we made an attempt.
Larry, what do you think about, you've got an organization too that does all kinds of tests and...
Well, the problem with that from the scientific perspective is trying to identify what that resonant frequency, first of all, would be, and then trying to determine whatever the proper amplitude would be to synchronize with it. I mean, it'd be a very significant undertaking. It's something that my group's actually we've experimented with that for years now, trying to figure out what the quote resonant frequency of the paranormal is, or what it is that is driving that. And there are a lot of things that I am firmly convinced that our own understanding of and our physical laws of nature just don't cover. I mean, we don't know everything. Hell, if you think about it, when Marie was a little child and we still thought that the earth was flat, we've come a long way. And there's been a lot of gains in the scientific community. And I think what we consider to be science fact today, in 25, 30, 40 years from now, we're going to look back and we're going to think, holy crap, did we actually believe that? Did we think that the world was flat? Did we think that this was the only reality or the only dimension that we were able to access and traverse? I think it's just a matter of, I think we're going to have to redefine, as Marie said earlier, we're going to have to redefine, first of all, what reality is.
Right.
What we consider reality, as well as what we would consider our perception of reality. I mean, if you think about reality, that's kind of a two-legged or a two-headed dog. Different people that have the exact same experience could have completely separate perceptions of that experience. Imagine sitting on the sidewalk. You're sitting cross-legged on a beautiful day. The sun's out, and it's just, you're just trying to feel the warmth and the energy. An ant walks by you. You're both existing in the exact same physical space at the exact same time. But your perception of reality is completely separate from the ant's perception of reality. The ant is perceiving a one-dimensional world. He's not able to appreciate all the visual sensory experiences that you are. But I guess what I'm trying to say is we are so limited too that perhaps we are ants at this stage in our progression. I mean, we are, what was that, Asimov, we're a type 1 civilization.
Right, and everything looks like magic to us.
Yeah, I mean, we are still a very, very primitive civilization. Despite all of our technology, our iPhones and iPads and all of our cool toys and gadgets and space travel, we are still a very, very, very primitive society. If you compare us, look at where we were 500,000 years ago to now and then project us out another 500 years. I mean, I can't even imagine. I mean, my iPhone, it's a computer. It's more powerful than a lot of computers that you could buy 10 years ago, 5 years ago.
Right.
You're carrying something in your hand that has more computing power and possibilities than the most expensive thing 5 or 10 years ago. So I think there's a lot that we're going to learn. I think there's a lot of what we're going to realize about our own reality that we think today is correct, but we may find out is not.
But I like what Larry said about how until we sort of, and we may never, although, he and I are certainly up to the challenge of trying to at least come up with something theoretical, until we really understand reality, talking about things like parallel universes and other realities and time travel and the paranormal, it becomes very difficult because it's like you're sort of diving off a diving board, but there's no diving board. So we need that foundation first to have some good theories, and we do. There are a lot of theories about what reality might be, but it seems like every day there's some new study, especially in the quantum world, that just totally upends what we thought reality was. For so long now, we were thinking everything was broken down into particles and waves. Now there are research studies going on that show that there is a sort of in-between gray zone that exists, a sort of field of superposition where nothing is particle or wave, and which we like to think of as the grid. But it's just amazing because even without a grip on exactly what reality is, we still are trying to understand all these other amazing theories and concepts. So right now all we can do is kind of use our imagination.
Now you said, and this is changing the subject to your future book, and if I cut in on you, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
You got my attention with that because I've talked to scientists before, like Bernard Hayes, and read his book, and he talked about this where things decide to become a particle or a wave.
Right.
Until somebody observes it, you don't know what reality is going to be. So your grid is really the point where reality is shaped or formed.
It's the gray zone. It is there. Apparently now is an even more fundamental layer of reality that it is that state of superposition where nothing is everything and everything is nothing because it hasn't been observed yet into a fixed state.
Right.
And so before people would refer to that as just, the vacuum, the empty vacuum of space and time, and reality was what came forth from that. But now what we're really kind of starting to think is that maybe the most fundamental level of reality is that gray zone, that empty state, which of course we know is not empty. In religious terms, it's the nothingness, the void, the primal void of nothing. And we would always say in terms of physics, well, you can't get something from nothing, and now we know you can. Neutrinos and the Higgs boson and all these unusual particles that allow for mass and for particles to take on other characteristics. Now that we're learning all this stuff, we realize that, we can take something out of nothing. So it's that nothing state becomes the most fundamental level of reality. That's kind of what we want to get down to. Is where does it all begin?
That something from nothing, we think we're just discovering that now, but, 100 years ago, Tesla already discovered it.
Absolutely.
So,
and I think, most religions talked about something like that. But, they talked about it in religious terms. So the scientific community just ignored it. But absolutely, Tesla was way ahead of the game.
Okay. Now, we're running short on time, but one of the things I wanted to comment on is while y'all were talking about time travel and the possibility of it, I know I've read of an ancient teaching that teaches that against time travel, for it says that you can't go into the past because it no longer exists, and you can't go into the future because it has not come yet, leaving you in the eternal now.
Right, exactly. There again, probably the great wisdom that has behind it, science, because like what Larry was referring to before, if we're talking in the quantum sense, once something happens, it goes back into that quantum state of superposition. Everything that hasn't happened yet is in that quantum state of superposition. It's only at the moment, the now of observation, does anything take on physical form. So that's where the scientific part corresponds with what you just said, the religious belief that, we only really have the now. We only really have what we're observing into reality right this second. Everything else has gone back into the void, and everything else that comes from this point on is still in the void.
Or do you think you might view it this way? And this is just me rambling in my head again like you've heard me do before. But while I was thinking and listening, that you might consider the past that's no longer existing, kind of like the gray area from which our present comes. And eventually, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm trying to talk without that. I really am. And eventually our present becomes a past that transforms into the next future, and it's like a constant state of energy transformation that's linked with time.
Well, and again, as Larry said before, you cannot destroy energy, therefore you cannot destroy the energy that made up the past, because it just goes into a different form, a different state.
Yeah. Now, before we get out of here, because I asked you about this before the show started, and I should have saved it for my listeners. You want to give the listeners a sneak peek at your next book?
Sure, you want to. Go ahead, Larry.
Well, our next book is called The Grid, and it basically is our contribution to the field as our theory of everything, if you will. We've managed to, I think, do something that no one else has done to date. We've kind of taken this big mysterious topic of the paranormal and the anomalous, and we've wrapped it in this neat little package that combines science, quantum physics, psychology, physiology, noetics, spirituality. We've basically figured out that there are very common there's very common things that occur in every single experience, every single event, whether you call it paranormal, whether you call it ghostly, spirit, whatever you want to call it. There are
even
things that
reality
are present.
Explain,
Absolutely, there are things that are present in every one of those events. So our book really explains why that is. Why does it seem like one person may have more aptitude for a paranormal experience than others? Why is it that one person may be standing right next to another person and that person has an experience while the other person doesn't? There's a lot of variables, obviously, in the picture, but we've managed to, I think, tie it all together. There's lots of authors that are out there that have been throwing pieces of it out, and they've been throwing out a lot of good information, but there really hasn't been anyone to date that's really kind of tied it all together and really wrapped it up with a neat little bow and figured out what makes it all tick together, and that's what this book is going to explain.
You have anything you want to add to that, Marie?
Again, the subtitle to the book tells a lot, too. The subtitle is Exploring the Hidden Infrastructure of Reality. And what Larry and I really wanted to do was try to define what happens that allows us to perceive reality and other realities. Is it physiological? Is it environmental? Is it a combination of the two? Well, what are the triggers and mechanisms by which we can experience not only this reality but other levels? So, yeah, it's a real all-encompassing theory. It's going to be general because it's sort of an introductory book where we're presenting this, we're laying it out. And, of course, our research will continue to explore more and more of the specifics of the grid. But, we've been leading up to this for, again, almost 6 years now. So we really wanted to put it out there and let other people contribute and give their ideas and really just get this concept out there.
Well, I know there's something I certainly look forward to myself. Real quick, I want to ask John once again if there's anything that you'd like to throw in there or add or ask at this point before we wrap.
The only thing I am curious about is the term reality. And when we're talking about reality, they've got all these programs on TV they call reality shows. And to me, I can't determine any reality out of any of it.
Oh my gosh! No. We know.
They need to rename all those. Those shows are all crap.
Did you guys see the newest? Did you see the newest thing that just came out? Is they're looking for people literally who are willing to be trained to go live on a colony in Mars, and it will be globally televised reality show.
I heard
Right?
about that. It was on
There you go.
one of these Good Morning Houston shows or something like that.
Yeah. And I thought, oh God, that sounds cool. And then I realized what it was. And I thought, no, I don't want to be on a reality show like that.
Well, what I'm pointing out is that we really need to come to a common term for reality.
Yeah, we do. I think maybe the one we've been using is not so good. That's
definitely not.
Yeah, we have some issues with the paranormal reality shows that are out there, but we'll save that for another time.
Gotcha.
And what about you, Gerald?
Well, I basically just want to make a comment and then I have a question. You know, if we go on Mars and we're living on this TV show, I mean, do they do it like Survivor? I mean, the tribe is spoken, you're voted off, we kick you in the face. You know, how do you get home? I mean, if you're voted off the planet, I mean, how do you get home?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. You have to go in isolation in like a little igloo thing. I don't know, but I thought that.
Exactly.
Whatever.
Yeah.
You see a guy come out and go, we're sorry, the tribe has spoken and you've been exiled.
Yeah. They just boot you out into space and you float around for the rest of your life. I don't get it. But it was only a matter of time now. Come on. We knew that.
Okay. Now, while you're talking about Mars, little item for interest for most anybody, if you go to www.et-secrethistory.com, this website belongs to Len Kasten, and he's the author of The Secret History of Extraterrestrials. In fact, I accidentally got 2 copies of his book, and I've read them. Well, I read one of them. At any rate, he confirms in his book that they have indeed built biospheres to go up to Mars for colonization purposes.
How funny.
Nice.
Yeah. See, they're already up there waiting for the reality show producers to get there. And
I guess that's how they knew they could do it, because they knew about the biospheres.
Right, exactly.
So I thought I'd throw that one in there. Okay, well, Marie, we got 8 minutes remaining. Do you have any last-minute thoughts for us?
I just going to encourage people to read the book because, like you'd said at the beginning, it's not just about time travel. It's about time anomalies. It's about how little we really understand scientifically about time. It's about all the ways that we already are time traveling with consciousness, dreams, paranormal experiences, what have you. So it's really more than just about, time travel.
Well, in all honesty, if you look at it in its most exact form, in my opinion, a person could say you can't walk down the block without traveling into the future because space and time are so intertwined.
Absolutely. They're stuck together. Right. Absolutely.
So, Larry, what about you? You got last minute thoughts?
No, I think that kind of wraps it up. That wraps it up well. No, I really don't.
How about be happy now and not worry about the past or the future?
Yeah.
What a concept, huh?
Well, Marie, that reminds me, you had a Facebook post about your New Year resolution. Let me hit you up to share that real quick.
Which one? I think there were a bunch of them.
I only saw one.
Yeah. I'm going to, I'm not, the past is dead. The future's not ready yet. I'm just going to go for it now. Something along those lines.
Yeah, something like that.
Larry, too. Yeah, we're both ready to take on the now.
And Larry, I think we talked over you a second ago, and you were fixing to say something. I think I just talked over Marie, too.
No, I was just going to say, people get so hung up on reliving the past, or they get so hung up on, planning for the future. Live in the now. Really, focus on what you have now, because you never know when it's going to be, taken from you, when you're not going to have that opportunity. So focus on now and just be as genuine as you possibly can in the moment.
Make the best of the time that you have, yeah.
Yeah.
And that sounds like words of wisdom to me. And real quick, once again, Marie's website is www.mariedjones.com. Larry's, and I pasted these in the chat room earlier. Larry's website is www.rpest.org. These links will also be up at YouTube when I paste a copy of the show over there, as well as at Media Cafe, and probably most likely Daily Motion, and it's probably at least the video will pop up over at Facebook, because everything I post at YouTube does.
Cool.
So y'all have all kinds of places to come hear it. You can hear it at my Talk Now Radio variety show that I put up. I'm going to archive it there. I'm going to archive it here at Paranormal Palace. There'll be plenty of places for anybody that wants to listen to the show in the archive. Don't forget to come see me at www.paranormalpalace.com. Let everybody know, while I was in the hospital, I failed to make arrangements for shows for this coming Saturday and this coming Tuesday. My next show will be Dark Force with Bill Bean on January 19th. I might could try to fill those 2 time slots, but I got a doctor's appointment. He's supposed to be setting me up with a pulmonary doctor, so I don't know how my time's going to be trying to get on medication for this throat and for these lungs. So rather than make a show arrangement, I'm just playing it by ear. If I do have a show, I'll post on it closer to the actual day that the show's supposed to be. And if I can get my voice fixed, then I also plan to start a 3rd show where I go to websites that are discussing various topics and read what's on the website, but as I read it, add my own commentary and my own thoughts just to see where it goes with it. Thought it was something new and unique. And I hope everybody enjoys it, but I can't get my voice fixed. There's no point in me doing that. John, Gerald, Marie, Larry, thank you for coming. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this right where we're at, unless y'all got something I may be missing.
Thank you for having us. Very nice.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming, guys. Larry, Marie, the door is always open. I look forward to having y'all back again in the near future.
Thank you. We certainly will.
Thank you.
You take care of yourself.
Pleasure, Larry and Marie.
Nice talking to you guys.
Yep.
Nice meeting
Thanks a lot.
you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, definitely.
Bye-bye. Y'all have a good weekend. Okay. And without any further ado, good night, everybody. Y'all be good.